Thank you everyone for joining us. We're really excited about today's topic, cyber sales. We've amassed an extremely talented roundtable of insurance sales all-stars to talk to us a little bit about what tactics are working for them when selling cyber insurance, and we'll be able to answer some of your questions. So to get my notes out of the way, if you haven't heard this before, because I just mentioned it, but I'll mention it a few more times. If at any point during our seminar you have a question, please type it into either the chat area or the Q&A area, and we'll be sure to try to answer them. We're going to go through and talk about a few topics to start, and then we'll be taking audience questions at the end. But if something pops into your head during the presentation, just toss it into our chat area, and we'll be happy to try to answer that. So thank you guys, and thank you panelists for joining us today. We are really excited to talk about what's working for you guys in selling cyber. So I'd like to start by introducing our all-star team. Up first, Victoria Crow, Vicky. She is the SVP of BF Saul Insurance, and she absolutely kills it selling cyber and managing an entire sales team of people who are killing it selling cyber. So we're very excited to hear what Vicky has to offer all of us. Not to tee you up too much, Vicky.
Yeah, thanks.
Next up, we've got Benjamin or Ben Yingling. He is the president of Crawford Yingling, and he is also absolutely knocking it out of the park selling cyber insurance to a wide variety of customers. So Ben, we're really excited to hear what you've got to say and how you're making it happen.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And finally, we've got Tammy Lynn, who is the COO at The Brokerage, easily one of the best named insurance agencies around. And Tammy has come on like fire, immediately joining our platform and selling circles around everybody in her neighborhood. And so we're dying to hear what she's got to say and how she's able to do that. So thank you, Tammy, for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
All right. Let's talk cyber, everybody. It's obviously a topic that we at Wingman talk about constantly. And we know that while it's probably not the biggest premium driver for any one of your accounts, it certainly is the thing that you read about and hear about the most in the news. And so we want to talk a little bit about, how to get that sale and how to best serve your customers when dealing with cyber insurance. All right, so here's my first question to the panel, and Tammy, let's start with you. What is the objection or complaint you hear the most when dealing with a client? What do they say to you when they say they don't want to buy cyber? What's their excuse, and what do you say to convince them?
I'm sure this is going to be no new thing for everyone, but a lot of times they say it's a matter of cost, no matter how low it is. And also a combination of, I don't have exposure to that. So those are things that we've had to overcome, over the last few years.
And what's your best combat to it's too expensive claim?
We try to explain to them how much coverage they get relative to the premium level, and generally speaking, it makes sense to them. It's for right now, cyber premiums are still affordable. That's what we
don't hold on to that hope.
Exactly. We convince them you need to get in right now. Things are happening out there. It's getting worse. So it's not going to get any better in terms of the cyber world and all the dangers that come with it.
And what about you, Ben? What kind of objections are you hearing?
Specifically, the objection that I get, and I deal with a lot of smaller companies of kind of 10 million in revenue and under. So this type of companies, what I get is, well, we've got everything in the cloud, so, they're responsible. Okay. And to counter that, I will say, okay, well, the cloud is not, invincible from being hacked or getting broken into. So check out your liquidated damages clause in your cloud computing contract.
Totally.
And then to, hey, it's in the cloud, we don't have, social security numbers. We don't have any of that. I give them like a claim scenario of like kind of a social engineering. I said, well, okay. So, people don't hack into your Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud. Okay, that's fine. But what happens if somebody, gets into one of your employees, emails and then starts to social engineer them and gets their password, and then they get in and steal all that information. So kind of giving real, that kind of like scenario is how I overcome that objection.
That's fantastic. What about you, Vicky? What are you hearing on your side?
The same thing that Tammy and Ben are hearing, actually. And what we do to combat that is we really have a deep dive discussion with these clients as to why we feel they need to have it, talk to them about what they feel their pain points are. They don't understand what the coverage is providing them. So you really have to be able to be knowledgeable about what is being offered, give them a scenario that you think would be something that would happen to them, and even giving true life claim examples from clients that you currently have. As this happened to XYZ company, and just think about how that could happen to you. With regards to premiums, like Tammy said, are still relatively low. The renewals, of course, are jacking up in premium, but if you can get them in the door from the beginning, I think that you can make that sale for sure.
Yeah, that's really good advice. We are expecting premiums to go up even for us this year. And we're telling everybody, if you can get them in the next month, do it, because we're not, we know that the higher premiums are coming. It is still underpriced. We agree. But it is easier to sell at $600 than it is at $1,500.
Very true.
Okay. Ben, let's start with you. What process does your agency deploy to try to make sure that everybody has cyber coverage?
So if I would say if there's a formal marketing process, I mean, no, at this point we don't have that, but with just every commercial client, we're trying to quote every commercial client that comes through and at least presenting it to them. And then obviously saving the fact in our saving that in our agency management system that we presented it to them, whether that's in an email or a phone conversation, so that we're protecting ourselves from an E&O standpoint.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about you, Vicky? Are you deploying any declination letters or anything like that?
We are. I mean, that's really very important point, Ben, because your exposure's out there if you don't offer it and they have a claim, or you don't have confirmation that you did. What we do with our clients is we do have a meeting with them 60, 90, 120 days out. And that is definitely a conversation we're having with everybody, especially the ones that already have coverage right now. We're taking a look at what their policies are and making sure that they have the most up-to-date policy, doing a deep dive within their language to make sure that they have more robust coverage. Lots of changes have occurred within the industry itself with regards to offerings, and some of the carriers aren't willing or able to keep up with what is needed. For example, the BYOD endorsement that you all have. Not all carriers have that. So it's really important to make sure that you know what you're selling.
Absolutely. And we're seeing a lot of carriers move to like a co-insurance clause or a really high retention or deductible for ransomware coverage specifically, which is a little bit alarming. And a number of the admitted carriers out there are requiring certain cybersecurity tools, preferably ones that are maintained and managed by that cybersecurity company, to be used before coverage kicks in, which is a little bit scary because you think you have coverage and then come to find out that if you didn't run their backups, like you said, then you wouldn't necessarily have coverage. And that could be pretty scary for your customers.
Yeah, very much so.
Now, Tammy, what about you? Do you have a process in place? How are you talking to customers about this?
Yeah, so formally we have two touch points. So the first touch point, like Vicky said, 60 to 90 days out, we talk to our clients. We also send a renewal request and includes coverage recommendations, and part of that is a cyber liability. And then when we go to talk to them about their renewal, we bring it up again. We sound like a broken record when it comes to cyber liability. And then when we
Music to my ears, Tammy.
Yeah, when we actually do our proposal, we include another coverage recommendation. At that point, we usually slide in a wingman quote just to show them what they've got available to them if they if they want to buy the coverage. So and they sign off if they decide to decline, and we keep that in their files. And during the year when events come up, or we get more publication about the cyber risks out there, we'll be sure to share that, and that's an opportunity for us to also open the dialogue again. And like I said, we sound like a broken record.
It's fantastic. All right, let's talk about who's buying cyber a little bit. Vicky, let's start with you. What % of your customers would you say actually have cyber coverage, and are you seeing any trends, whether it be size or industry or sophistication level of who's buying?
So within our agency, we have a whole gambit of insureds, from large corporations to our small commercial. We see about an uptick of about 20 to 30% of our clients either having it or at least inquiring about it. What we see more often these days is our government contractor clients requiring coverage. We ask to see what the contract is because sometimes those contracts are asking for 10 million. You're not going to get a $10 million policy for somebody who's making 2 million in revenue. So those are definite conversations we've actually had with you all on how we can offer those terms. We tend not to see a big tick up in those because of the fact that they don't warrant the contract or earn the contract. But we are seeing more increases in carriers that that are out there that we work with, not only you all, but we place the majority of our business with you, but being able to offer the coverages that we need to be able to offer to them. We wish that we would have a bigger uptick. But I think that 20% is better than it was a year ago. We definitely have more people asking about it. Our small commercial business is asking more and more for it. But again, just like everybody else, this is a hard sell. So we have to be able to educate our clients as to why they need to have it and why it's so important. And that's understanding what you're selling. If you don't understand what you're selling, you can't really sell it.
I totally agree. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, so as I said, we're pretty much focused on like the small business sector. I would say that for every, I would say probably half of our customers are buying it. I am seeing more interest in the small businesses. We've had people reach out to us that say, "Whoa, okay, well, gosh, we're hearing about all this. Like, what is cyber insurance? We hear it's very expensive." So it's about educating that. We've had some opportunity with, commercial prospects, kind of asking us about cyber, and then that leads us into the rest of their insurance program. I thought that made an interesting point is that we are seeing higher limits, and when you get those requests for like 10 million, first party cyber limits or 5 million first party cyber limits, I think my understanding is that the market is really tightening. I mean, I had a conversation with Travelers recently that they have put a hold on anything over 5 million right now, in certain markets, I think in certain segments. So it's like tightening up. So I guess my suggestion to people on this panel was, get your people in now, as price is going to go up, and I mean, use that as a tactic. Look, the market's tightening. I mean, you might not even be able to get this without, $100,000 retentions in 10 years. I mean, I don't know if that, but that's the kind of stuff.
I don't know that it's going to take 10 years. But
it might not even take 10 years, right? So that's kind of what I'm seeing, at least.
What about you, Tammy? Anything, any trends or, seeing a higher uptick this year from last year?
Definitely, I think a lot more of our clients, just in reference to this question, a lot more of our clients are even asking about it. So they've seen what their peers are going through. So in terms of percentage of our clients buying cyber at this point, I want to say a majority of them are, maybe around 75% are buying the coverage. Even the small guys who previously thought they didn't have exposure would buy them. In terms of trend, we've taken a baby steps approach with a bunch of our clients. They start with $1 million limits. We've got one client that's got $5 million limits, but so there hasn't been any sort of pressure in terms of availability of coverage or higher retention. We have noticed though the uptick in the premiums. So that's one of the trends that we've noticed. Still not bad, but based on all the scary stuff we're seeing out there, I don't expect that to hold.
And I can say for us at Wingman, we were surprised that 2020 we didn't see a drop off in the retail space purchasing, which we were expecting. We also didn't see the loss of accounts in that sort of hospitality area that we were expecting, because the risk is still very much there, which was fascinating. We're also still seeing that there are some industries that are a little bit slower than others. Construction, for example, I still have like a bounty out. If anybody can sell cyber to a construction company, I want to know how they're doing it. But in contrast, we're seeing a lot of manufacturing firms that are buying it more and more each year. So there have been some interesting trends, but I agree it's a little bit of trying to stay ahead of the market to the best of your abilities. Okay, this is my favorite part of the presentation, and this is what I'm frankly most excited to hear about. You guys have all individually stressed the importance of storytelling, even just this far into our panel, the importance of storytelling in selling a cyber policy. Do any of you guys have a favorite story that you like to tell that actually helps in the sales process, or that you find resonates really well with perhaps hesitant buyers? I will put that to Tammy first.
Okay, I mean, I've got a couple. So just to give you a little background, 85% of my book of business is contractors, construction companies.
Oh my God.
And they're
I'm so excited. Tell us everything.
They're traditionally the most hesitant to buy cyber liability coverage because they make their money out in the field. They don't do anything online, except, they don't realize they do their emails online. And one of the biggest incidents that we've had to guide our client through was when one of our construction companies, the president's email was hacked. It wasn't just a spoofing or anything like that. Someone actually got his email address and his password and studied his writing style and his cadence for a while. I think forensics figured out they've been in the system for a few weeks before they made their hit. And what ended up happening is probably a very classic tale nowadays, is he emailed accounts payable and said, I need you to send money to the subcontractor. They asked me to pay them a little early this week or this month. And, payables tried to do the right thing, reach out to him, but he was not available. And they went ahead and they sent the money. So it ended up obviously not being legitimate, but fortunately they had coverage enough to recoup the losses, which was around $500,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is a classic case of social engineering, that, had sort of a happy ending, but,
still, we'd rather it not happen at all, but that's
exactly
true.
Exactly. Yeah. And, it's so far, I mean, that's just one example. I mean, with it can happen to any contractor. That's all I can say. It's like contractors have exposure, and it's the email, it's human behavior. You cannot control how one of your employees, does things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about you, Ben? Any good stories you like to tell?
Yeah, it involves my agency, so it's impactful to the client. I was playing golf on an afternoon with a prospective client who owned like 5 restaurants, and everything was going great. We're laughing, having some beers, and I get a call from my office that said, hey, did you see this email that went out? And I said, what are you talking about? And it was an email that was sent that looked like it came from one of our account executives that said, hey, in the subject line, it's, important insurance information, and there was an attachment to it. And that feeling was like my stomach just dropped. And I tell this story to clients using that terminology, like my stomach, I'm going from the high, I'm out golfing with this great prospective client, having a good time. And man, it felt helpless,
Yeah.
Luckily, a lot of it went to customers like junk folders. We got an announcement out very quickly. We got our IT team on it, and, no harm, no foul. But knowing that could happen to me, it can happen to, any small business. So I'll use that story. I said, what would happen? You've got 250 clients or whatever. What would happen if that email went out and infected one of your clients' computer? That's on you. So using that story has had positive results because I can speak with the emotion of how it impacted me, and it was an awful, awful feeling.
Yeah, that we had a situation happen to us, and I don't think I shared a story other than that for a really long time because, I mean, first I was like nervous, and then I was pissed, and well, I think I'm still in the pissed phase. But it's true because the overwhelming feeling is helplessness. And that's us who actually know what we're doing and what we're talking about. Imagine if you didn't. That's a really great story. I appreciate you sharing it. What about you, Vicky? Any stories you like to tell, to help?
I do.
someone
And
else?
Ben, I actually feel for you. I'm just sitting here cringing how that, we're in the insurance industry and we know cyber and this still happens to us. And look what happened to CNA over the weekend. So, I
Exactly.
mean, can happen to anybody. I do have a story from one of our clients that bodes very well to Access as a carrier. We have a client that we've insured for a few years with cyber. They had a ransomware issue, didn't inform anybody. We found out about it several months later. They were still trying to ferret through everything that had occurred and having their own forensics go through their systems. They paid the ransomware. Then they reached out to us and said, hey, is this covered? So we got Access involved right away. We got our claims. We have a claims advocate in our office. We got him involved, an attorney. We got him involved as well. And Access jumped in, took care of it, and reimbursed them.
Wow.
So there's definitely good stories that come out of some of these things that occur. It's just a matter of finding the right one to hit your client with, for them to say, okay, now I get it. Now I know why I need to buy this coverage and what it all covers.
That's a really good point. If anybody listening, the second moral to that story is call Access first, because it'll save you a lot of time, money, and energy, because they can deploy the resources a lot faster and a lot more efficiently than you can. But I'm glad that one had a happy ending. That just terrified me in real time, because that's my worst nightmare. But I'm glad to hear that it's working out. That's hilarious. All right. Well, those are all fantastic. Do you guys utilize a claims database, or are you mostly just using word of mouth stories that you've heard to sort of pick up the stories that you're using with your customers? That's open to anybody.
I'll go ahead and answer. That's really, for us, it's word of mouth. I mean, we've got enough client stories to be able to tell, 24 stories to our insureds. And just
isn't that a story unto itself?
Yes. And then constant research. That's one of my roles, is that I keep, abreast of what's going on and hearing these stories, that you can bring true life scenarios to your meeting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All right, next question. Oops, let me go back one. What piece of advice would you give the people on this call? These are agency owners, members of sales teams, service members. What's the one piece of advice you would give them to help seal the deal? Let's start with you, Vicky.
So my advice is education for yourself. You really need to understand what you're selling. You need to do a deep dive into that policy before you try to explain to your client what it's covering. That's one of the things that we definitely do in our office. We do research. We make sure that all the information that we're providing to our client is valuable to that client and for their industry. And you don't have to have somebody like me in your office that is the cyber practice leader and spending the majority of my time on knowing what's going on in the industry, but you can take some time to be able to do that. If you don't understand what you're selling, you're not going to be able to make the sale. And don't rely on the policies that your clients say they have. Well, I've got a commercial policy that's got some cyber attached to it. Let me take a look at it and see what you really have. Don't rely on these bolt-on coverages that are attached to other policies.
It's a really great tip. What about you, Ben?
So I'll kind of echo Vicky. Read the policy and read it over and over again. I've found I've taken customers because, certain policies will offer, broader coverage on, just read the policy, and hone in on the stories, like sell it with emotion. And I kind of treat cyber like kind of like employment practices or life insurance. I mean, it has to be sold,
Right.
at this point. I think
Yeah.
it's crazy that it has to be sold at this point, because but it is optional. It's not like other policies. So yeah, read the policies. Be emotional when you sell it. And really show that.
Well, and reading the policies is also an excellent cure for insomnia. So good luck with that.
Yes.
But no, he's right. He's absolutely right. All right. What about you, Tammy? What have you got?
I think Ben and Vicky both had basically share what I was going to say. One of the things that I've always pointed out to our clients is that cyber liability is sort of a misnomer. I mean, it actually is, because liability indicates that coverage is for a third party, whereas most of the coverages being used on the cyber policy is actually first party coverage. And a lot of our clients were not aware that, those existed. So yeah, I would echo my other two panelists that education is a big part of getting people to buy cyber. I think the constant reminding of them of what can happen to them is also very helpful, and that's what's helped us over the last couple of years in selling this sort of coverage. Being able to give the examples and being able to show them your peers in the same industry have this sort of exposure, and you do too. So it's resonated with a lot of them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Somebody in the audience, William, brought up a really interesting question. I'm curious to hear. Does anybody use a term other than cyber insurance to make it clearer or less terrifying for a buyer? Say information security or technology coverage or something else, or are we all sticking to the cyber name?
Pretty much just sticking to the cyber name.
Stick to the cyber.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I'd
an
agree.
interesting point.
I
Go
think
ahead,
it's
Ben.
more telling. The cyber is the whole gambit of what is potentially out there for the exposure that's out there. Can I add just one more thing based on the last conversation the last question that you have?
Absolutely.
One of the things that we do tend to state when we're talking to our clients is that we try to sell the fact that they are also purchasing a whole host of, or an army of companies to help them mitigate if a cyber exposure or cyber claim does happen. Sure, you've got these limits of liability that are going to cover you for PII, regulatory, that sort of thing. But if you don't have to go out and hire your PR firm, you don't have to hire the forensics to come in and do the deep dive into your systems. These are the people that you're buying for that little amount of money and peace of mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point. A cyber insurance policy is more than just the monetary value. It's the resource to know that somebody who's done this a million times is going to deploy those resources on your behalf to mitigate the damage.
Yeah, and you can transfer it off to them, like transfer the risk off to them or the
Right.
job off to them, and you can get back to doing your job and not
Yep.
have to worry.
Yep, I agree. All right, a couple more questions from the audience. If anybody else has a question from the audience, please use the Q&A. Let me know. Another interesting question was, do any of you guys market yourselves as cyber experts? I know Vicky does because she is in fact a cyber expert. Tammy, Ben, is this a focal point for you guys, or is this just one of the many services that you're providing your customers?
It's one of the many services that we provide to our customers, but it just so happens that I've done the most research in our office. So anytime one of our producers is talking to a prospective client or a current client, they usually loop me in, and I'm the one that gives them the spiel, if you will, about cyber liability. But not really marketing myself as a cyber expert.
Are any of you guys partnering with tech companies or managed service providers in your area to provide insurance for their customers?
I could say, so short answer, no. Have I tried? Yes.
Yeah.
But I find that the MSPs they're focused on selling MSP services, and they might say, oh yeah, you should consider cyber, and then they
Refer. Yeah.
we've had a lot of them reach out to us to do a partnership of sorts where, every customer gets a certain amount of cyber insurance included. And we've yet to have one of those deals work because of the homogeneous risk issue. If the MSP is to blame, then every one of their customers are going to have a claim. That's one. And of course, they're not licensed to sell insurance. So they have to have an insurance agent sitting in the middle of every transaction, which it just doesn't lend itself particularly well to what they're trying to do. But I think there is partnership opportunities there in the future if we can streamline some of the process. But I don't know if any of you guys are looking into that with agents.
No.
Not really.
Any other questions from the audience? One other question we got from Brian, which was really interesting, and I think Vicky, this sort of harkens back to your first comment, which is that how do you handle the higher limits right now for these businesses that don't have the revenue to support it? Are you able to get them the limit? Are you trying to help them negotiate with the contract to reduce the requirement? And I think Ben mentioned this as well.
So we do both. So, knowing full well that we see these contracts all the time, 10 million limits, ridiculous, you're not going to get them. We push back and say, we're going to seek these 10 million limits for you. We're probably not going to be able to get them for you. We can get 5, maybe 6. We layer them with other carriers. You all will go out and be able to get try to get up to 5 million. And then we're also trying to layer coverage and have them push back with that contractor, whoever is sending them that requirement, to push back and state that I'm not going to be able to get it. What is the maximum that or the minimum that you're willing to go by? And we tend to see them back down to 5, sometimes 2.
Wow.
You have to be able to push back as somebody who is the insurance provider and have the authority to state, I am not going to be able to get that for you. I will try. You have to push back.
Yeah.
It's worked. It's worked for us. Have we been able to get the 10 million? No, the most we've been able to get is 5.
Yeah.
We do have other accounts that carry higher limits than that. They have much more revenue than that. But on these government
you have to have
contractors
in
that have little
excess of your
revenue.
limit in revenue.
Yeah.
And it also becomes cost prohibitive. Like, we'll say we can get you 10 million limits. It's going to cost you $100,000. Is your contract even worth $100,000?
Usually not, but yes,
And
that
usually
is
not.
correct.
Usually not. It's true.
Mhm.
Hospitals have been asking for 10 million a lot, which is a
Right.
problem.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense, but it's a problem. What about Tammy, Ben? Have either of you guys run into this issue?
No, not generally. I've only seen a couple of construction contracts that would require cyber liability, and that's when they might be responsible for setting up some sort of network infrastructure for them. But it's very rare that we see any requests for over 5 million. But I kind of had a question for Vicky too. Have you ever spoken to a requester of those higher limits, and have they ever been able to give you a reasoning behind why they're asking for such high limits?
I've not spoken with anybody directly. I've had lots of conversations with the clients and with our commercial practice leader with regards to that. It tends to be standard language. So I'll bet you the person that is putting that contract together or sent the contract to our client doesn't understand why they need to carry those limits either.
Got it. Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. All right, we got another really great question from Ingrid, and then we'll wrap it up. She said, does anybody have any training classes, webinars, obviously other than the ones provided by Wingman, Ingrid, publications or other recommendations in how to brush up on cyber for something like a weekly sales meeting or to present to your sales team?
Oh my gosh. Net Diligence.
Yeah.
Net Diligence did their annual meeting last year virtual, and I'm sure they're doing it again this year. There are a wealth of incredible information. It's netdiligence.com. And you can just sign up and receive webinars from them. And then, or even any kind of information, anything they're putting out. Troutman Peppers is a good place to also go take a look. There's so much information out there that I am inundated on a daily basis with emails for documents that are sent to me, white papers that are sent to me, webinars that are sent to me. I just sat on a webinar yesterday afternoon and learned some more information. I always learn something. I would at least try to attend 2 webinars a week, and then I'm constantly reading.
That's fantastic. Anybody else have any other suggestions? Well, I would say, Ingrid, the other thing I would mention is I think if I personally have learned anything from this seminar, it's that we at Wingman can do a better job of disseminating stories to all of you to use for yourselves and keep you up to date on the current trends. I think we'll be looking into that ourselves. So I want to say thank you to Tammy and Ben and Vicky for your amazing insights for the last half an hour. You all are fantastic at what you do, and we're very lucky to get to work with you. And thank you to everybody who got to join us today. If you have any follow-up questions or additional information, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Wingman team in your usual way, live chat or reaching out to us individually. This has always been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we get to do this again very soon. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ellie.
everyone.